Hi, 10-minute movies here, and today we are going to tell you about a drama, action, technology movie called Tenet. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. At the beginning of the movie we are shown one of the national opera houses in Ukraine, precisely in Kiev, which is where an operation is taking place. In the operation, our main character, whose name is never mentioned until the end of the movie, and is only mentioned as the protagonist, where he is a CIA agent, undercover and participating in a special force, who is involved in a mission to retrieve a mysterious capsule, called plutonium. While the protagonist is carrying out his mission, he soon realizes that the enemy forces are preparing a plan to carry out a bombing in the building, in which many spectators faint, due to inhalation of a gas released through the ventilation holes by the enemy. At the same time, the protagonist's cover was discovered by a soldier from the enemy forces, but fortunately he was saved by his partner in the mission. The plutonium was finally found, but the protagonist's cover was again discovered by the enemy, because he was securing several bombs that had been installed by the enemy forces so that they would not explode. But the protagonist was saved by someone, but not his teammates, but by a mysterious masked agent, with a red rope hanger sign on his backpack. Upon returning to the car, the protagonist and his partner were instead kidnapped and taken to a railroad track. On the railroad tracks, the protagonist and his partner were interrogated by two unknown men. Here the two men knew that the protagonist was a CIA agent, due to the pill found on his uniform. He was also tortured by having his teeth pulled out, in order to open his mouth about his mission. But the protagonist quickly swallows the pill from the hand of his fallen colleague, thus making him unconscious. But when he comes to, he realizes that the suicide pill is fake, and he is told by his boss that it was a test. He is then recruited into the secret CIA organization, whose mission is greater for the benefit of the country, and the safety of humanity. He is then given information by his boss with a crossing gesture using both hands, and then mentions the word Tenet, which means the principle that can open the wrong door or the right one. Soon the protagonist is taken to a place with many wind turbines, and delivered to one of these turbines. While waiting for his pickup, the protagonist keeps his body in shape by exercising muscles in the cabin. Long story short, he was picked up and given a car, in which the coordinates of the protagonist's destination location had been arranged. Arriving at the destination, the protagonist meets a scientist, where the scientist tells him that they are preventing World War III, which is a much worse threat than the threat of a nuke. The protagonist is then taken to a room whose facilities are full of time reverse projectiles, or bullets that are shot in reverse, and he is also told how the bullet projectile works. The scientist reveals that this can be done if we look at it from both sides. After the protagonist practices it himself, he is quite surprised. Then the scientist directs him to go to India to find someone named Sanjay Singh. The protagonist then goes to India, precisely in the city of Mumbai, to meet someone. When he gets there, he is accompanied by his new colleague named Neil, who seems to know a lot about the protagonist's life. Here the protagonist reveals to Neil that he wants to meet Sanjay Singh without making a scene, but Neil invites him to break through, because Sanjay Singh cannot be talked to nicely. In the evening, they went into action by climbing into Sanjay Singh's apartment, using a catapult rope. After paralyzing several guards, the protagonist began to ambush and threaten Sanjay Singh to reveal many things, including time reverse ammunition. But Sanjay did not want to reveal it, because it would violate his principles as a businessman, Priya said. After that the protagonist meets with Priya, and it is Priya who tells him, and he knows more about the ammunition. He reveals that the company that formulates the bullets is owned by a man named Andrei Sater. But Priya himself also does not know if Sater makes technology that can reverse time. After that, Priya provides information on someone who knows how to approach Sater. The protagonist also goes to meet this person, where the person is Michael Crosby. Based on information from Michael Crosby, that Andrei Sater used to live in northern Siberia, in a mysterious city called Stocks 12. Crosby revealed that almost simultaneously there were bombings in two places 2 weeks ago, namely at the Kiev Opera House, and in the city of Stocks. Crosby suspects that Sater is involved in the incident. Crosby then tells the protagonist that he can only approach Sater through his wife. Crosby also provides a fake painting by a famous artist that can make it easier for the protagonist to get acquainted with Sater's wife. The scene then switches and shows the protagonist looking at Sater's wife, who picks up his son from school. After that the protagonist goes to the workplace of Sater's wife, whose name is Katerina Barton, where she works as a painting analyst. The protagonist then handed over the painting and explained that she bought this painting from a famous artist, and wanted to resell it. Therefore the protagonist asked Katerina for help to check it. After that the two of them got into a conversation, where Katerina revealed that the painting owned by the protagonist was a fake. Katerina also added that her husband, Sater, was a close friend of the famous painter. Katarina also shared that her relationship with Sater was on the rocks. She recounted a time when she and Sater were on a vacation to Vietnam on his yacht, but they had an argument and an emotional Katarina left and brought her son back to the mainland. While on the way, Sater called her and persuaded her to return. When Katarina was about to return to the ship, she saw another woman jumping off the ship. This made her jealous and felt hurt, but at the same time Sater disappeared from the ship. A few moments later, Sater's men came to stop their conversation. Then Sater's men took the protagonist to the kitchen, while Katarina was escorted to go home. Sater's men intended to finish off the protagonist, but instead they themselves were finished off. The next morning Katarina contacted the protagonist to talk about the original painting of the famous artist. Katarina revealed that the original painting was at Freeport Airport, precisely in Oslo. On the other hand, Neil disguised himself as a client at Freeport Airport, to ensure the security of the place. There he saw that the fire safety system did not use water, but used another gas that could restore the air to its original state in seconds, and there was a 10-second warning that required everyone in the room to get out, otherwise they could suffocate to death. With the information they had obtained, the two of them arranged a plan, by crashing a transport plane without passengers towards the storage warehouse, of course with the help of a colleague, named Adept. Where he was indeed adept at carrying out these missions. After that they carried out the plan, and immediately plunged into the field. As long as the plane crashed into the warehouse, Neil and the protagonist quickly entered a room divided in two by a partition, which was seen to have several gunshot marks. Suddenly there were two masked people who came out simultaneously from inside the revolving door, one of which used an inverse gun or a backward gun, and continued to try to attack the protagonist. On the other hand, Neil was teaching the masked man and managed to unmask him, but Neil let him go. He went to find the protagonist to prevent him from killing the masked man, but suddenly the masked man was attracted by something and disappeared. After the strange incident in Freeport, the protagonist returned to India to meet Priya. Priya then explained that the two people who came out of the revolving door were the same person. Priya also said that the rotating door in the room was an inversion machine, given from the future. Priya said that plutonium-241, obtained by the protagonist, would be transferred to Talon. The protagonist had to get the plutonium without killing Sater, in order to find out what Sater's role was. The next day Kat arranged for the protagonist to come to the party on her husband's ship. Sater decided to accept her arrival, where the protagonist revealed she would bargain for her life by offering to steal the plutonium for Sater. Sater agrees, after which they immediately begin the plan, but it turns out that Sater knows the protagonist's intentions and immediately takes the plutonium himself, but their mission is interrupted by an inverse vehicle, or temporal pincer movement, where they participate either forward or backward in time, by entering the temporal steel. After the operation is completed, Sater then manages to move backward through time. In the end Sater manages to escape, just before the national agents arrive there. The protagonist then follows Sater back through steel temporal, where he turns out to be the driver of the time-turning car. The protagonist is able to save Kat, but cannot prevent Sater from obtaining plutonium. It is revealed, Sater plans to use the plutonium to trigger a device that will reverse entropy towards the entire planet, killing all creatures. Sater is dying of inoperable pancreatic cancer, and if he dies, he doesn't want anyone else to live either. Sater plans to go back in time to when he was happy with his wife, and then turn off the device connected to the switch. The protagonist, Neil, as well as Kat, follow Sater backwards in time, traveling by container from the cargo ship, and back to where they started. They infiltrate the Freeport Art Storage Facility, again where they enter another temporal steel, which allows him to move forward through time again, and also his gunshot wound to heal. It is here revealed, that the protagonists were masked attackers during their first operation at this location, way back in the past. A further military operation is launched where the protagonists and Neil attempt to retrieve the stay-building device, from an abandoned Soviet-era city, while Kat is with her husband on his yacht, aiming to prevent him from committing suicide, before the core of the device is retrieved. Kat then kills Sater, as the protagonist and Neil successfully retrieve the core device. During this operation, the protagonist notices that Neil has a red strap on his back, and therefore he is the masked man who saved her at the beginning of the movie. The protagonist then travels further into the past, helping to protect Kat from being killed, and the movie ends.